Hi, I'm Paul Carroll. I'm the editor-in-chief at Insurance Thought Leadership. Here today on behalf not only of ITL, but of the International Insurance Society to tackle one of the really, I think, big issues facing insurance now and in the future. I'm delighted to have an all-star of all-star casts here. Vishakha RM, who is the CEO of India First Life Insurance, Arthur Ozeki, who is an executive vice president and head of Asia for RGA, and Ken Mungan, who is the chairman of Milliman, and with whom I've had the pleasure of doing, 2 or 3 of these webinars by now. So when people talk about the talent gap, it seems to me sometimes they talk about it in a way that's important, but a little bloodless. In the US anyway, people talk about how we're going to lose 400,000 employees in insurance by 2026 out of a population of about 3 million. It's a lot of people. That's a lot of people to have to replace. But it's not just a matter of bodies. It's a matter of finding the right sort of talent, which means more diverse talent, some younger talent, so we have the next generation and so forth. And then not just recruiting them, but training them and retaining them and making them as productive as possible. So, as I say, I'm delighted to have these 3 here today because I think they really get into all the issues that are important, not just the numbers when it comes to talent. Vishakha, I'll start with you because we need to identify the right talent pool before we start talking about attracting them. So I'm hoping you can start us off with a little explanation of why diversity is so important when it comes to looking for the right talent for insurance.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Paul. And yes, that is an absolutely right starter because I think diversity needs to be a very conscious agenda. And I sometimes feel that when the diversity agenda has been broadened by making it inclusivity and diversity, I sometimes feel that the entire plot is getting lost. Would you say that a room full of diverse men from various nationalities, various communities, various languages, various religions, would that be diverse without the gender component in it? And similarly, vice versa, if you had a room full of women who were diverse, it wouldn't, because I think the fundamental diversity is the male-female, and then you have all the remaining diversities in terms of, the physically challenged or the religion or the communities and so on and so forth. So I'm not against expanding the scope of diversity, but I think there is one prime differentiator, and then there are subcategories of differentiators to bring in far more diversity. We're still at a space where the gender diversity agenda has not been met. So before we expand onto the diversity, we should be doing it, but we need to be very conscious of having a gender diversity. Why do I make such a passionate case about this? Because you see that the graduates now have changed. When you look at all the colleges and all, you are seeing a 50-50. You are seeing that I was at an Institute of Management recently, and you had a 45-55 gender ratio in terms of women, men. But when it comes up to entry level, you still have that 50-50. And then when it comes to middle management and it gets to senior management, they just fall away. And I think it's so important to consciously promote it. Otherwise, by the time you have top management, you have no diversity left any longer. And we are the ones who are making all the rules. We are the ones who are making all the policies. And if we don't have that perspective, then we will never be able to, get the diversity agenda on track. So I just feel it's a vicious cycle that we are very easily capable of slipping into, which we already are in. And therefore, diversity has got to be a very stated, conscious agenda on hiring and recruitment.
Arthur, what would you add?
Thanks, Paul. And I agree very much with what Vishakha just mentioned. I think, the obvious one obviously is in terms of gender. And when we look at even at RGA, we have a program called GROW, which stands for Grow Representation Women in Leadership. Because as Vishakha pointed out, we do see a lot of women when we do recruit, when we take people at the more sort of junior levels, we do see quite a few women, but as it goes up and up within the organization, we do see a sort of a fall off in terms of that representation. I also feel that diversity is very important because we're basically in the risk business. I mean, insurance and especially reinsurance is all about taking on risk and making sure we're doing it in a prudent way. And when we think about how we address risk, how we sort of consider risk, that diversity of thought, diversity of experience, backgrounds, and the way that people actually view things through different lenses is also quite critical. So having that diversity within the organization, with that ability to sort of tap people that have, again, these varying backgrounds, not just gender, but also in terms of their upbringing, their backgrounds, their specialties, that in and of itself is extremely important to ensuring that we have a robust view towards how we operate our business. So in many different ways, diversity plays to our strengths across industry. And as we look forward to not just diversity in terms of experience, but also in terms of age and other opportunities, you mentioned the fact that there was sort of an outflux of seniority within the ranks going forward. And we see that very much across our industry and our company as well. And we are very, very sort of concerned about how we preserve that thought, preserve that knowledge within the organization, and while bringing in the younger talent with the knowledge that we have across the organization as well, to foster diversity through experience within the training at the same time. I just pause there.
So it always seemed to me that there's sort of two angles here. One is that diversity is the right thing to do, but the other thing is that there's an awful lot of talent you're missing out on if you don't pursue all the folks out there who are possibilities. I'm an avid Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and there is actually something that happened that launched them back in the 1970s, where somebody discovered that, there was a lot of talent at small, generally Black colleges. And the Steelers found that talent and won 4 Super Bowls, and I'm a fan for life. Ken, you're not living in Pittsburgh as I was, so I don't expect you to be a Steelers fan. But what would you add to what Vishaka and Arthur are saying?
Well, but I will point out that I did go to a Pittsburgh Steelers game last season, and they were just amazing. So what I'd like to add to what Vishaka and Arthur pointed out in terms of diversity is the reason it's so essential is because of the problem that we're trying to solve in the insurance industry. The insurance industry is primarily concerned with protecting people, families, protecting organizations so that the organizations can achieve their full potential. That problem of protecting people is one of the most wickedly complex and difficult problems that human beings undertake. It's like a game where the rules are not clearly understood, where they change suddenly, where the patterns are only partially visible, where the when you try and do something, the results you get out of the system only occur, after a long lag, and it's just such a difficult problem, and no person is ever going to solve that problem in a meaningful way by themselves. You have to work with other people. So how can people come together to solve this problem? You need to build an organization that has a diverse set of people with different backgrounds, skills, and perspectives, but most importantly, the way that they approach problem solving. And so that's like, you've got to get the type of organization that Vishaka and Arthur talked about if you're going to have a realistic chance of doing this. The other thing is, when someone enters that organization, they're looking around, seeing, what type of organization have I come into? And when they see a diverse organization, they realize, all right, I'm going to be treated with respect here. I'm going to be valued here. It's safe for me to kind of really go out on a limb and try and make a real contribution to solving this organization's problem and to protect people. And that gives the ability of that individual and the organization, it gives them the ability to achieve their full potential. So that's kind of why I believe in this cause so passionately.
So there was an interesting study I saw recently where some professors had sent out 80,000 resumes to the 100 biggest US companies and had essentially the same credentials there, but there were some names that were clearly women, some men, some designed to suggest that somebody was Black, some white, and so forth. And anyway, they did a lot of analysis. One of the things they found was that the more diverse companies were, the more they were inclined to hire people who are not just white males, the more profitable they were, which to me is, a really compelling message. Can any of you think of an example in your experience where there was a better decision made because of this kind of diversity that's brought to the decision making?
Yeah, I think you can see it almost every single day in conflict resolution. And the other aspect that I see very clearly is in product development. And let me go about the conflict resolution. I don't know how many people get aware, but most women have the power of influence and not the power of authority. When you look at a typical patriarchal society, where the woman is not working, or even if she is working, where the power flows from the man, and yet they say the woman rule the house. And how does that happen? And that happens because she gets power through influence and not necessarily through authority and hierarchy. And you see that play out almost every day in an organization where a woman can get work done across cross-functional teams far better because she does not rely on a hierarchical power to be able to go and work with people who are not reporting into her. And you see that ability for cross-functional collaboration far easily when you've got a woman project leader. I think that's one thing that we see almost regularly. The other one that you see is in terms of product development. I think that sensitivity to risk, the fact that in a life insurance product, when there is a death, the person who's left behind is really the woman and the children. That empathy of the fact that the insurance benefits the woman and not the man, because assuming here, of course, that the man is the primary breadwinner. And that same empathy in terms of designing products and creating marketing strategies such that whole awareness of the dependence that people have on you and the responsibility that comes on to you. Simple campaigns that got devised because of that insight was, leave a home, not a loan. Something as silly as that, but you feel that perspective doesn't come through when it is a full, there's not enough diversity there. I think just two examples.
What I've seen in our organization is that as important decisions come up that need to be made, as the organization has become more diverse, the decision-making process is a little bit slower, but then the decisions that get made are more durable. They have a much higher chance of actually being successful over the long term. So it's far less of the case of quick decisions where we then end up driving over a cliff, if you will. Some of those quick decisions work out great, but some of them the consequences are not very good at all. And so it really, by pulling the entire organization in where you have that difference of perspectives, it tends to surface unintended consequences and points where people wouldn't have thought of it previously.
Yeah, I was just going to add on top of that. Obviously, when Ken mentioned before the need for serving our clients and customers, obviously we have a purpose statement which says that financial protection, we want to provide financial protection that's accessible to all. And I think as we look at how we actually develop that, how we actually sort of pursue that, one of the things that's maybe a little bit closer to home right now is for example, we've really pulled together, taking up on Vishaka's point around product development. We look at several markets, for example, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, which have many similarities in terms of their demographics, aging populations, sandwich generations, and the like. But by bringing together those three markets and talking about the issues they face and how we are going to solve the problems, how we're going to do the product development, it is very interesting to see that the data they have and the way that they approach it also differ. And if you can sort of combine those efforts and really have the best of all these different regions, not just those three regions, but even beyond that, to bring those thoughts together and how we can actually develop products, how we can actually fine-tune products, how we can actually develop the marketing around those products at the same time, is really a strength of having those diverse similar but also diverse thoughts and processes coming together to deliver something that is more powerful. So I think diversity can be thought of in many different ways. Obviously, individual diversity, but also, as I said, diversity of cultures, markets, and how these things are obviously delivered.
If I may, I just wanted to pick on what Ken said and look at it as a perfect example. And it is a fact that probably decisions become slower, but it is also a fact that probably the decisions are becoming slower because there is an attempt being made for consensus building and not I have said it, so it is done kind of an authoritarian decision. I just wanted to leave that perspective because, it's fascinating when you observe it, and I'm sure when you go back and you think of some of your meetings, there is a deference to hierarchy, which comes naturally to, I feel it comes naturally to men. And I feel that's why it's difficult in a diverse culture to work, because it doesn't come naturally. To women, it's just my perspective and my observation over the past years. Just look at this room, right? I still wanted to have an opinion after Ken made his statement, whereas I don't think any of the others would have really interrupted me after I finished my statement. So I think it's just an example of how there is a lot more consensus building that women naturally try to do, as compared to a very authoritarian, order-based, hierarchy-based acceptance of instructions. Not sure if any of you notice it, but that I notice it very, very often. And so I just thought I'll bring that out.
I would echo that, inclusion, diversity is important, but inclusion is equally, if not more important, to the extent that, to Vishaka's point, you can have people come together, but unless you have that freedom of thought, that the sort of the lack of any sort of bias and the need to sort of have that safety in the ability to speak up, that's what really creates the power in the diversity and allows that sort of the sharing of thinking and ultimately, I guess, building that consensus, which Ken alluded to before, which is longer lasting.
Right. So Ken, we've now identified the pool of talent we're trying to attract. How do we attract them?
We attract them with purpose. If you look at the insurance industry and the problem that we're trying to solve, fundamentally, the insurance industry is about protecting people. And so the way we shouldn't attract talent is to say, hey, do you want to come work in this mature industry, this mature conservative industry? It's, do you want to be part of something larger than yourself? Do you want to work on one of really the most extraordinary purposes that people can have for their life, which is, working together with your colleagues to protect people, to protect families, to protect communities, and so that's giving people that sense of purpose. I think it's just so incredibly important. So when I became chairman of Milliman, the first thing I did is say to all of my colleagues, why are we here? What is our purpose? And I didn't have an answer to give them. I said, let's actually all work on this over the next year. So together, over a year, 5,000 people went through. We must have gone through 17 different drafts of, what is our purpose, and ultimately it got refined down to serve our clients, to protect the health and financial well-being of people everywhere. And at my company, you can go to somebody and say, what is our purpose? And and 9 times out of 10, they'll come back with that answer. And I contrast that with other companies that I worked for long ago. Their kind of sense of purpose was really not clear to the people. And if you ask someone, you'd have almost no chance of them actually being able to tell you what it was. So I can't stress this enough. The work that we do in insurance offers us the chance to give people a real sense of purpose, and we need to focus on that and use that to help attract them to our industry.
And that's been one of my frustrations in the 10 years or so I've been involved in insurance. I tell people I'm the person who chose to get into insurance rather than sort of falling into it, which is what a lot of people seem to sort of apologetically say. And there really is a noble purpose to what insurance does, and just somehow the word doesn't get out there enough to attract the kind of people I think the industry ought to be attracting. Arthur, as we were talking ahead of time, you had, I thought, some interesting thoughts on advanced technology, among other things, as a lure. And as someone who's been following advanced technology for 30 plus years now, that certainly would pull me in. But would you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. No, I'm more than happy to. I mean, I will sort of just follow on Ken's statement first around the fact that, as I mentioned before, our purpose statement is surprisingly similar to what Ken has said. I mean, our purpose statement is to make financial protection accessible to all, and the way we wish to do that is obviously through better products and really sort of delivering what the people need to continue on their lives and feel that protection. In terms of technology, I think this industry as a whole is becoming obviously it's very based on data. It's very much based on how we not just collect the data, but use that data and share that data. And the advent of new technologies, whether that's streamlining processes for onboarding, whether it's using AI for underwriting, whether it's using other types of tools, it's actually quite fascinating. And it's one of those areas where I think the hunger and the desire for us to sort of do more of that is really attracting another generation, another sort of set of individuals into the industry. And we are clearly relying on that. We're also deploying that internally in terms of setting up what we call a talent marketplace within the company, which allows people to register their interests and their skills, and that there's a tool that now connects people to each other if there's for example, a new post or a new position that people are looking to fill. So the uses of technology, both in terms of development, both in terms of connectivity, and in terms of sort of enhancing the products we offer to our clients, is ultimately one of the big facets around how we develop this. We are therefore deploying more and more into our IT efforts, really trying to energize data science and energize other types of utilization of technology across the whole platform.
Vishaka, how do you think about attracting people?
Thanks so much, Paul. I think about it of hyper-personalization, and I think there is so much of diversity of people who are coming in and the backgrounds that they come in from. What they're looking for in a job is often very, very different, even though they may be of the same demographics. Someone who's coming in because they've just quit their agriculture and they're the first time private sector employees, you see people like that. You see people who have come in from their second generation of parents who've already been working, so they're looking for what can set purpose. For them, survival and money is really not the primary concern. They're looking at contributing. And it is really different strokes for different folks still, at least I would say in India, because of the whole gap in terms of the economic strata of people. And so what we try and do is we give a plethora of options to people. And we say, okay, what do you want to choose? Where is it that you'd like to come in? So we're using technology to Arthur's point, and we've got technology which is a hyper-personalized bot, which interacts so that people don't feel judged in terms of making their choices. And the bot interacts with each person to say, okay, what is your motivator? Why are you joining us? And then we try and see if we can align their roles, their packages, their postings, everything according to the expressed preference. People who want recognition get into sales jobs, they don't get into IT backend jobs. People who are looking at money, then it's again a directly bonus incentive driven job. And people who want to serve, we try and put them into customer service. So I think we're trying to do a lot more of alignment of people's preferences and the role that they have, so that when they come into the organization, they can do what Gen Z famously calls be you. So how do we enable that be you is what we try and do in the organization to attract people.
So, Arthur, you started to get into a little bit about how you nurture people once you attract them. I wonder if you would talk a little bit more about that, because you get all this talent and obviously you want to unleash it and as thoroughly as you can. How do you think about that at RGA?
No, it's a great question, Paul. And I do feel that, once you onboard anyone, I mean, you certainly want to make sure you continue their development journey within the organization, and you both extract their skills, but also educate them, train them for new opportunities as well. And the more that you really appreciate that longer term prospect, the more that we generate value, sort of mutual degree of value. We do have a number of programs within the organization where we do allow, we suddenly have something called STIR, which stands for the Short-Term International Rotation Program. We have STEP, which is a short-term experience program. These are opportunities where people can actually try to try out different roles within the organization. This is all obviously supported by the managers on both sides, but it's really allowing people to sort of try new opportunities, understand different cultures, understand different types of processes, and sometimes it's really meant to enhance their current role as much as perhaps provide them with a future role in a different form. So again, this talent marketplace that I referred to before is a great way for us to identify the talents, identify the opportunities, and connect the dots and allow people to sort of explore that. It does require an organization that embraces flexibility, that really does want to sort of provide those opportunities, because it is a sacrifice on the part of both the employee and the managers to make that happen. But we still see a great amount of sort of success, a lot of progress being made, and it really does lead to the retention of employees at the same time.
Vishaka?
Yeah, I think training, upskilling, knowledge, it's all paramount. It's very important. And however, what we see as the biggest challenge is the attention span. Most people don't seem to have the attention span to be able to go through a module, to sit together and work. So what we're trying to do is do gaming-based learning modules. We're trying to see how you have more quiz-based, so you give very short bursts, and then you create a whole community of learners who are competing with each other. So you've got ranks, you've got where you are in progress. So it's worked well for us on key trainings on compliance, anti-money laundering. We actually managed to get 100% participation and 100% of the people who actually get their certification. And the only thing that works is the online presence of where each one is. Just as data point, just as statistics, no pressure. But yeah, I think the kind of pressure that online creates is, I think, the kind of pressure that no manager has ever been able to create with any amount of shouting. So we're using technology and bite-sized training modules at the relevant time. So we're trying to also try and use AI now to figure out when is this person most receptive to receiving information, and we're throwing in nudges and little bite-sized nudges. Because I don't think, at least we've not seen people come into a classroom, sit down and pay attention for longer than 10 minutes. I think, and even that's asking too much.
Yeah, and how about you?
So on my side, when I think about training and nurturing people, the people in our organization are on a path to become an expert profession. So they find their area of expertise, and then over time, they just develop incredible depth of knowledge and skills in that area of expertise. But amazingly, what we find is when you look at the people who are the leaders in the industry in field X or field Y, and they are very clearly that acknowledged expert professional in their specific area. What we don't find, it's not that they pop into the organization and then they just start drilling down in that one area. That instead, what they do is they have incredible range. That while they have that clear area of expertise, they've also gone through a period of time where they're developing some skills, some knowledge of many different areas. And then after kind of looking around and getting that breadth of experience, figuring out what they really, really are passionate about, and then becoming that true expert in that area. So the best example, the best description I've heard of that is describing these people as T-shaped, where that the vertical part of the T, that's the area of expertise, but then they have that horizontal part of that T where they've got enough knowledge in a range of different areas where they can then when they're trying to solve a truly complex problem, they can bring in their colleagues and collaborate with them to work on those problems together. And so to a point that Vishaka raised earlier, that it's, you just get so much more progress out of an organization that's collaborative, that doesn't follow this strict hierarchy. And the way that we illustrate that is with what I call the most important question there is, which is, will you help me? And so if somebody's got that, if you have that T-shaped person where they see that, yes, they have their expertise, but to solve this complex problem, they need this person with expertise over here and this person with that expertise over there. It doesn't advance to that next step of actually solving the complex problem unless they can bring themselves to put themselves out there and ask that question, will you help me? And we've actually surveyed our employees and asked them two questions. The first question is, when someone asks you for help, will you help them? Everybody says, yes, of course I'll do that. And then we ask them, when you need help, will you say, will you help me? And then there's a gap, because you're taking a risk by doing that. So to nurture and train our people, it's sort of getting them to see that they can take that time to become a T-shaped person, and that they can have the confidence in the organization that we've built to ask that question of, will you help me?
So I always love hearing about real companies with real training, nurturing programs, because at the Wall Street Journal, great organization, but it was sort of, you look like you can swim, let's toss you in the deep end and see if you can. There were enough layers of editing that people would catch their mistakes before they got into the paper, but there was no discernible training in the 17 years that I was there. So to the last thing I want to get into, it seems to me that we're now at a really interesting spot, partly because of what's going on with technology, including this generative AI and these large language models, but also because we had this forced reset called COVID, where people were working from home and we're now sort of feeling our way back to what the optimal design ought to be in terms of work. So people have had their expectations reset, or the possibilities change in ways that we really haven't seen in a very, very long time. So as much as I hear people in the insurance industry talking about redesigning the customer experience, which certainly needs help, it seems to me that we can also be redesigning the employee experience. And I wonder how you are doing that in your organizations and where you think we can go from here in terms of marshaling this talent that we're talking about finding and training. Maybe you can, I'll start with you on that one.
So just very briefly, in terms of, so when we think about AI, I think it's going to be just incredibly transformative. And I put it in the same category as the invention of electricity, the start of the computer age. And nobody's going to figure this out on their own. So it's going to require sort of configuring the organization for maximum collaboration. And during the pandemic, everybody went home. People got very good at just kind of working on their own and doing tasks. But now that generative AI has come along and a lot of jobs are being redesigned, the way work is being done is being redesigned. That's going to just require us to come back together, at least in an effective hybrid mode, to collaborate, to figure out how to actually deploy this new capability. Because if you don't, then other organizations are going to just move so far ahead of you so quickly, you'll get left behind.
Arthur, how are you thinking about all this?
No, I think it's really a balance and something that we're going to have to continue to challenge ourselves on. I was at a dinner last night with someone that was telling me about the fact that in the future there will no longer be any programming languages. In essence, you just tell a computer to design a program that addresses a certain need, and the AI will actually generate that software for you without someone having to actually code it. So it is a new frontier to something that we really need to sort of embrace and at the same time understand and how we can sort of leverage that. But at the end of the day, we were talking about how we actually audit these things, and auditing these things is ultimately down to people as well. So the need is for us to find that balance between how we utilize technologies and how we sort of obviously continue to develop that expertise and maintain that expertise through collaboration, through ingestion. And we spoke a bit before about some of the retention programs and training programs that do rely on Zoom and do rely on technology. These are all wonderful, but at the same time, we are also realizing the importance of that personal interaction, that physical interaction of people coming together. So collaboration is something that you can do to some extent virtually, you can do to some extent separately, but at the end of the day, the value of having people come together is extremely critical. So we're sort of trying to develop, as I said, that balance between having a frequency around virtual type sessions, but at the same time, setting aside time, setting aside sort of opportunities for people to actually get together and collaborate, because that spark, that sort of that innovation that we sort of need often does really come out and shine when we have that interaction that's more spontaneous.
Vishaka, how about you?
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. I think I completely resonate with Arthur that it's going to be a balance. I personally believe that the hybrid culture is here to stay. However, I think the challenge is going to be the paradox. For us, in order to figure out what we wanted to do, we rolled out a survey amongst all the people and said, okay, what do you prefer? Would you prefer working from home, office, or a mix of it? We got almost an equal response. But then when we went to the second level and third level, what you realize is that a lot more women who are in the operational category prefer to come into work. They just want to get away from their chores at home and have a separate space. People who are able to bifurcate space, physical space, and we're talking about a city like Mumbai, okay, where you have about 5 or 6 people living in a 2-bedroom house. Physical space is a constraint for a lot of people. And I think that you find at the lower levels. But as management, that is a category that you were happy to have working from outside of office, because you just have, they're all individual contributors who can contribute from home. But an economic strata, they are the ones who need a workplace. So we had an interesting paradigm of how we go about doing it. So we finally have a hybrid. We have allocated space, and then we have this program where you can come in and you can book seats. So we give an option to people, whoever wants to come in, you book your seat in advance and you can come and work. That's for the operational category. Above that, we've kind of made it mandatory for people who are in the strategic to come into work every day. Because what we realized is at that level, while they have the comfort of being able to work from home, they're not individual contributors. They are team players, they are strategic. They have to really collaborate and talk and discuss and have an idea while walking past, have a problem solved by getting across to the table and not by writing long emails. So we just mandated that everybody above a certain level, which I think is a DVP level or deputy VP level. So in the strategic band and leadership band have to come into work, and the people below them, we gave them an option. We made it mandatory that you come in at least once a week is a mandatory, and the rest of it we've left it to the individuals to figure out. And I think we have the right balance today. We still have some of the tactical and leadership having murmurs saying we're better off at home, but then you can't probably please everybody.
It seems to me that some of the things you can do with this hybrid work possibility these days, feedback into the talent issue. because you have a lot of people, a lot of women who are the primary caregiver for their children, who can now do things sort of ad hoc in the day. If they have a certain amount of work to do, they can figure out how to schedule it without having to be in the office and line up a caregiver. Same with people who are taking care of parents. I mean, Arthur, you talk about the sandwich generation. I mean, it sort of goes both ways. And you also, I think, have a lot of people who maybe don't want to work full time, but they're getting to be 60, 65, 70, 75, and they want a little work to stay stimulated. Maybe they want access to healthcare or whatever. So to me, this sort of the possibilities are way more open than maybe they have been in a while. So we're basically done, but I just want to circle around and see about any final summary thoughts based on what we've talked about here. Arthur, do you want to start us off?
Sure, no, Paul, thank you. And this has been a wonderful session. I want to thank the organizers and obviously all my sort of co-panelists here. I mean, talent is, people often ask what keeps you up at night. And I wouldn't say that it necessarily keeps me up at night, but it's something that's always in my mind and trying to sort of make sure that we are really building for the next generation, building the organization in a way, not just talent-wise, but also in terms of the processes, the thoughts, the culture, as to how we bring it all together. And that ultimately, I think, will lead to, attracting further talent, really generating growth in industry, and also providing the opportunities for individuals that do join this industry to continue to flourish. So I think this is something that any leader, among the three of us included, will always have really top of mind in trying to sort of promote that and ensure that we have that strong pipeline of talent and develop that in the future.
Vishaka?
Thank you, Paul. I think that's a brilliantly moderated panel, and thank you so much, Ken and Arthur. I think it was fascinating talking to all of you. I think we covered multiple topics. Thank you so much, Paul. I think we covered diversity, we covered inclusion, we covered technology, and I think it's a whole myriad of topics. What I'm taking away is it continues to be the challenge of balance. Balance to ensure that you've got diversity across gender, across age. Do you have enough experienced people and enough new geners? Not get overwhelmed by only wanting to bring in the Gen Z, but also trying to get in the experience of people who know how it is done, and not just how the computer does it. I think bringing that whole balance of knowledge and constantly having that balance of work from home, work from office. I think every aspect that we've picked up, technology, how much reliance on technology to the absence of common sense and application of mind and judgment. So I think it's a constant balance between all of this that we have to work on. And I sometimes feel you can't really take your eye off, because you lose the balance if you just take your eye off. That's what I get the feeling.
So Ken, you want to bring us home?
Sure. I just like to say that I learned a lot just by listening to Arthur and Vishaka on this panel. It's amazing how RGA has set up a system that gives Arthur's colleagues such an extraordinary capability to realize their full potential. I mean, I think that's truly inspiring. Vishaka, you laid out just this amazing vision for an organization where, by having a higher level of diversity, the organization becomes able to do so much more, so much better. And you highlighted the benefits that women bring to the table. And I just want to say, I find the organization that you articulated inspiring, and not to lose the fact that men will benefit tremendously from being a part of the future that you so skillfully articulated. So
I will encourage people to follow what we do at ITL and what the International Insurance Society does. We will put up a splash screen at the end of this, so you have URLs and can see what we're doing. For now, I'll just say thanks very much, and hope everybody got as much out of this as I did.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.